Imagine being so spectacularly incompetent at your job that Piers Morgan, a man who's made a career out of being controversial, looks like the reasonable voice in the room. That's where we are with Keir Starmer right now, and honestly, it's quite the achievement. Welcome back to UK Political Insight, where today we're watching Piers Morgan absolutely demolish the Prime Minister over the Alaa Abd El-Fattah disaster. And the truly wild part is that Morgan's got a point. When Piers Morgan is the one making sense and you're the one looking ridiculous, you know you've monumentally cocked things up. We're talking about a blistering attack that's gone viral, millions of people watching Morgan call out government incompetence, and an apology from Abd El-Fattah that's somehow managing to make things worse rather than better. Buckle up, because this is what happens when basic due diligence meets government laziness and loses spectacularly. Let's set the stage properly, because the context here matters. Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, posted on Boxing Day, December 26, that he was delighted Alaa Abd El-Fattah was back in Britain and reunited with his loved ones. He paid tribute to Alaa Abd El-Fattah's family and everyone who campaigned for his release. He called it a top priority for my government since we came to office. That's not a casual mention. That's a full-throated endorsement. The Prime Minister personally celebrating someone's return and making it clear this was a priority case for his government. That's a significant political commitment, and it means Starmer owns whatever follows. What followed, of course, was the discovery, or rather the rediscovery, because this information was never actually hidden, that Alaa Abd El-Fattah has a social media history that makes your racist uncle at Christmas dinner look tolerant. Post calling British people dogs and monkeys, post advocating for killing Zionists, post boasting about hatred of white people. This isn't someone with mildly controversial opinions or views that might offend some people. This is explicit racism, calls for violence, and expressions of hatred toward multiple groups, including the very country whose prime minister just celebrated his arrival. Answer Piers Morgan, never one to miss an opportunity for righteous indignation, and this time he's got the moral high ground completely locked down. On December 29th, Morgan took to Twitter, or X or whatever we're calling it today, reshared Starmer's original post about Alaa Abd El-Fattah and absolutely unloaded. He wrote, "Nothing symbolizes our government's incompetence than this post by the Prime Minister 2 days ago about a vile, racist, anti-Semite who wanted to kill Jews, police, and white people and called the British dogs and monkeys. All he had to do was check Alaa Abd El-Fattah's social media history." Let's break down why this hits so hard, because Morgan's constructed this perfectly. First, he's calling out not just this specific incident, but using it as a symbol of broader government incompetence. Nothing symbolizes incompetence more than this. That's saying this is the perfect example, the defining case study of how useless his government is. Then, he systematically lists Abd El-Fattah's offenses: vile, racist, anti-Semite who wanted to kill Jews, police, and white people. Those aren't subjective characterizations or political spin. Those are accurate descriptions of what the post said. And then the kicker, the line that really makes this sting. All he had to do was check Abd El-Fattah's social media history. That last line is devastating because it highlights how easily this could have been avoided. We're not talking about information hidden in classified documents or insider knowledge that only intelligence services could access. We're talking about public social media posts, the kind of thing literally anyone can check. It would have taken 5 minutes, maybe 10 if you're being thorough. A junior staffer could have done it. An intern could have done it. My gran could have done it if someone showed her how to use Twitter. And yet, somehow, the entire British government apparatus, with all its resources, all its expertise, all its supposed professionalism, failed to do this basic task before the Prime Minister publicly celebrated Abd El-Fattah's arrival. Morgan's description of Abd El-Fattah as vile, racist, anti-Semite is going to upset some people who will say it's inflammatory language, but let's test that against the evidence. Alaa Abd El-Fattah called British people dogs and monkeys. That's racist. He advocated killing Zionists and expressed hatred of Jews. That's anti-Semitic. He boasted about hating white people based solely on their race. That's also racist. So Morgan's characterization, while certainly blunt, is factually supported. This is what makes the attack so effective. It's not exaggeration or hyperbole, it's just stating clearly what the post actually said. The phrase "wanted to kill Jews, police, and white people" puts the violence front and center. This isn't about offensive opinions or speech that makes people uncomfortable. This is about explicit advocacy for violence against specific groups. That's not political speech that should be protected. That's incitement. And the fact that the Prime Minister welcomes someone with this history shows either catastrophic ignorance or willful blindness to what should have been disqualifying information. Now, Piers Morgan is not exactly universally beloved. He's polarizing by design, makes controversial statements for attention, and has his own history of questionable judgment calls. But that's what makes this so damning for Starmer. When even Piers Morgan can accurately claim the moral high ground, when his criticism is so obviously justified that even his critics have to admit he's right, you've really screwed up. It's like being lectured about moderation by Keith Richards or about punctuality by someone who's chronically late. When the person calling you out has their own issues, but they're still obviously correct, that's rock bottom. The timing of Morgan's post is also significant. December 29th, 3 days after Starmer's original post, right in that window where the story's fully blown up but before the news cycle moves on. Morgan's got millions of followers, and this post has been seen by a massive audience. It's not just political commentators or Westminster insiders seeing this. It's ordinary people, the kind who might not follow politics closely but who follow Morgan because he's entertaining. And what they're seeing is a clear, straightforward explanation of why the Prime Minister has monumentally failed. The framing of this as symbolizing government incompetence is particularly effective political messaging. Morgan's not just saying Starmer made one mistake, he's saying this encapsulates everything wrong with this government operates. The lack of basic due diligence, the prioritization of looking good over actual substance, the disconnect between what they say and what they do, it's all here in this one incident. And when you frame it that way, it's not just about Abd El-Fattah anymore. It's about whether this government is competent to govern at all. Now let's talk about Abd El-Fattah's apology, because this is where things get even interesting. On December 29th, the same day Morgan launched his attack, Abd El-Fattah issued a statement apologizing for his shocking and hurtful social media posts. He claims they were written more than a decade ago and were expressions of a young man's anger and frustrations in a regional crisis. He specifically mentions the wars in Iraq, Lebanon, and Gaza, and the rise of police brutality against young Egyptians. He says he particularly regrets posts written as part of online insult battles, with total disregard for how they read to other people. This apology is interesting because it's simultaneously an admission and an excuse. He admits the posts are shocking and hurtful, which is progress compared to just saying they were twisted out of context, but he immediately contextualizes them as expressions of youthful anger during regional crises. That's the classic "I was young and emotional" defense. And while there's some validity to acknowledging that people grow and change, there are limits. Calling for people to be killed based on their ethnicity or religion isn't just youthful indiscretion, that's advocating violence. And saying it was part of online insult battles doesn't make it better, it makes it worse, because it shows a casual willingness to express genocidal sentiments just to score points in an argument. The phrase "I should have known better" is the minimum acknowledgement of responsibility, but it doesn't really grapple with the substance of what he wrote. Should have known better to call British people dogs and monkeys? Should have known better to advocate killing Jews? Those aren't mistakes of judgment about appropriate language. Those are fundamental moral failures. And an apology that treats them as roughly equivalent to saying something rude in an argument doesn't demonstrate genuine understanding of the problem. Alaa Abd El-Fattah's claim that some tweets were completely twisted out of their meaning is a bit rich when he's simultaneously apologizing for others. So some were taken out of context and others were genuinely awful? That's trying to have it both ways, apologizing enough to look contrite while still maintaining that some of the criticism is unfair. It's a hedged apology, the kind of politicians give when they're not really sorry but recognize they need to say something. The regional crises defense is interesting because it's positioning his statements as understandable responses to geopolitical events. He was angry about wars and police brutality, so he expressed that anger through racist and violent rhetoric. But here's the thing, Millions of people were angry about those same events and managed to not call for killing entire groups of people. Being angry about injustice doesn't excuse advocating different injustices. If anything, it makes it worse because it shows an inability to distinguish between opposing specific policies or actions and dehumanizing entire populations. The claim that these were written as part of online insult battles is almost comically inadequate as an excuse. Oh, you were just having an insult battle online, so you casually advocated genocide? That's not mitigation. That's revealing how normalized extreme rhetoric was in your thinking. If your go-to insult in an online argument is to call for mass murder, that says something disturbing about your values and judgment. Morgan's attack is particularly effective because he's not engaging with these excuses or contexts. He's just stating plainly what was said and what should have been done. All Starmer had to do was check the social media history. That's it. That's the entire extent of due diligence required to avoid this disaster. And he didn't do it, or someone in his government didn't do it, or they did it and decided it didn't matter. Any of those options reflects catastrophic failure. The phrase, "our government's incompetent," is possessive in an interesting way. Morgan saying, "our government," claiming ownership as a British citizen.